Iain from RTO here. Welcome to what I describe as a dull, miserable day in Northampton. It's going to be one of them days where nothing changes. So to warm us up, I thought we'll do some prog this morning, and we're going to look at one of the most underrated progressive rock bands ever, although they did have a very cult following. We're talking about Gentle Giant. They were formed in the late 60s, early 70s by three brothers, Phil Schumann, Derek and Ray. And they got a couple of other guys in, which we'll talk about in a moment. They were all multi-talented musicians. If you look at all the instruments they play on their albums, they're just fantastic. They've made 11 albums in 1970 and 1980, and as I've said, they are one of the most underrated prog rock bands in the UK. So let's have a look at these really good albums. So coming in at number 11, we have the 10th album, released in 1978, Giant for a Day. This features the fantastic, underrated Gary Green, another underrated keyboard player, Kerry Minea, Derek Shulman, Ray Shulman, and John Weathers on the drums. Obviously Phil Schumann had left, but we'll get onto that later. So the first track on here is called Words from the Wise. This just does not sound like Gentle Giant one little bit. It sounds like some American Midwest rock band. It just doesn't resemble progressive rock at all. Thank You. Again, it's a very weak track. It just gone away from prog altogether. Giant for a Day. It's probably the worst track ever by Gentle Giant. It just frustrates me that they've gone away from their roots. Spooky Boogie. This is as far away from prog as you can get. I do not know what they were doing on this. Take Me. Oh dear, oh dear. It's a very, very weak track. It just doesn't do anything for me. Little Brown Bag, probably the best track on the album. It's a nice little rocker, and I do like that one. Friends, I don't mind this one either. It's a nice little acoustic number, and it's pretty good. I don't mind that one. No Stranger. Oh dear. It's very poor, and it's just not sounding like Gentle Giant of old. It's only good by. The only thing I can say about that is the fantastic guitar solo from Gary Green. It's superb. Rock Climber. It's okay. It's one of the better tracks on the album. I've never been keen on this album, and if you watch any other ranking shows on Gentle Giant, 90% of the time this is at the bottom of the pile. It has got a couple of good tracks on it, but the rest of it is pretty poor. So I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 4 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 10, we have the 11th and final album, released in 1980. Features Gary Green, Kerry Minea, Derek Shulman, Ray Shulman and John Weathers. First track is Convenience, Clean and Easy. Not a bad track, this one. Great guitar work here from Gary. Very underrated guitar player. Nice touches, nice textures. Very, very good track. All Through the Night. Again, that guitar at the beginning is really good. This is more rocky than prog, but it's a good track. Shadows on the Streets. Love this track as well. I think it's a really good track. Okay, it's going away from prog, but it's a very solid track. Number 1, some great keyboards from Kerry on this. Absolutely at the top drawer. He is, again, a very underrated keyboard player. Probably one of the best prog keyboardists. He's up there with Rick Wakeman and Keith Emerson, Tony Banks. He should be put in that group because he is fantastic. Underground. This is okay. Great little proggy track actually, and I like that one. I Am a Camera. It's okay. It's not proggy, but it's an okay track. Inside Out. Now I don't know if this is prog rock, funk rock, or rock. It's listenable. It's not Imagination. That's all there is. Not my cup of tea, I'm afraid. Okay, this isn't a bad album. It's just not prog. It's more mainstream rock, but it is listenable. So I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 6 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 9, we have the 8th album, released in 1976, Interview. This is a concept album conceived as a radio interview. 3 of the tracks integrate brief interview sections which were staged in the studio. Gary Green, Kerry Minnar, Derek Shulman, Ray Shulman and John Weathers again. First track is Interview. Yeah, this is an interesting little track. I do like the keyboards on this from Kerry. Sounds very jazzy. Then you get some Hammond organ coming in, and Kerry does a fine job on it. Give It Back. Quite a funky little tune. I've got no problem with that one. Design. It is a little bit weird, even for me. I know they were quite initiative. You know, they went out there. Gentle Giant. But this is too far out there for me. Another show. Again, it's a little bit weird. It sounds like you've got 7 musicians all playing different stuff. It just isn't particularly good. Empty City. This is a good track, very proggy. Nice work again from Gary on the guitars. The bass line on here from Ray Shulman is fantastic as well. Then we get Time In. My favourite track on here, the Hammond organ sounds really, really strong on that. Carries this song pretty good. And then I Lost My Head. Just one of them little prog tracks. Little bits of Yes in here. And I quite like it. Okay, as a concept album, there's sometimes a little bit hard to follow for me. You have to really concentrate on what's going on, but it has got some really good tracks on it. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 6.5. Okay, coming in at number 8, we have the 6th album from 1974, The Power and the Glory. This features Gary Green, Kerry Minnar, Derek Shulman, Ray Shulman and John Weathers again. First track is called Proclamation. This is one of them tracks by Gentle Gentle Giant that I think would be far better off as an instrumental. The vocals are a little bit weak, but musically it is fantastic. So Sincere. Again, a little bit disjointed. It's pleasant enough, but it doesn't glue together very well. Aspirations. Love Kerry's keyboards on this. It's absolutely cracking. Really holds this track together. Fine keyboard work on that. Excuse me. Playing the Game. Great prog rock. This is again such an underrated band. I love Gary's guitar work on this and Kerry's keyboards. The interplay between these two is brilliant. Cogs in Cogs. I like this. This is a cross between medieval English music that meets progressive rock. Great track. Love this one. No God's a Man. Another great track. The vocals on here are fantastic. Derek either sings brilliantly or not very good. But what makes this is the ensemble of all the voices. It's pretty good. The Face, stonking stuff. Great bass line here from Ray. Again, Kerry is on fire, and some really good drumming from John Weathers on that one. Velocity, one of those tracks I just can't get on with. I do find some of their music a little bit too bizarre. The Power and the Glory, the title track, quite rocky, reminds me of Genesis Colony of the Slipper Men. Pretty good. Again, very good album, real classic here. I've got some of their great tracks on this one, and I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 6.9. Okay, coming in at number 7, we have the 5th album, released in 1973. This is the first album released after the departure of Phil Shulman. Gary Green, Kerry Minard, Derek Shulman, Ray Shulman and John Weathers, of course. First track is The Runaway. Again, we got that great interplay between Gary Green and Kerry. Absolutely phenomenal. An Inmate's Lullaby, I like this tune, but the vocal is a little bit weird and you can't really understand what's going on, but it's a nice tune like that one. And The Way of Life, this is very funky prog. The bass line from Ray on there is absolutely amazing, and we get some lovely delicate touches on the drums from John Weathers. Superb track. Experience, great vocal from Derek on here. He has got when it works, he's got such a great voice for prog rock, and again, great guitar solo from Gary, absolutely out the top drawer. Then we get A Reunion. It's one of those little ditties that's got a little bit of strings in there, because these guys could play violins, cellos, you name it. They play all the instruments on here. They don't get anybody in. It's a little bit different and very good. Title track, In the Glass House. It's one of them tracks that there's so much going on, but for once it actually all worked. It comes together. Very, very good track. Very deep prog, but excellent. Okay, another great album. They were such a consistent band. This has got some great stuff on here, and I love this one. And I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 7, we have the debut album, self-titled Gentle Giant, released in 1970. This album features Gary Green, Kerry Minard, Derek Shulman, Phil Shulman, Ray Shulman and the original drummer Martin Smith. Opens up with Giant, classic, isn't it? Mini epic in itself. So many different movements. Love the mellotron on this. It's just buzzing. Great track. Funny Ways. This reminds me of something off that very first ELO album. Very similar sort of arrangement this is, and it's quite a good track. And unfortunately, I think these guys do it a little bit better than ELO. And ELO, as you know, is one of my favourite bands. Some great bongos on here from Martin. Absolutely belting. And then we get a track called A Cool Card. I think that's how you pronounce it. This has got more elements of guitar work from Gary. Great drumming for Martin Smith on this. It's got this sort of half beats and everything. It's pretty good. Isn't it quiet and cold? What I like about Gentle Giant is you just don't know what instruments are going to turn up on the tracks. The cello on here is fantastic. I think the cello, let's have a look, because I do put all these down. Who plays the cello on this? It's Kerry Minart. It's absolutely brilliant. Then we get Nothing at All. Great guitar solo from Gary. And then you get a mini drum solo from Martin Smith. You don't get many drum solos on studio tracks, but it's great. He's a good drummer. Why Not? Again, this is a mixture of prog and medieval music. It's fantastic. And then we get The Queen. It's actually the national anthem played by Gentle Giant. Gary's guitar work is pretty good. It's not as good as Brian May's, but it's still great. Okay, again, one of the great albums of 1970. There were so many good albums in that year, and this is up there with them. A very underrated debut album as well. And I'll give this one an RTO ranking of 7.5. Okay, coming in at number 5 then, we have The Missing Piece, 9th album, released in 1977. We've got Gary on here, Kerry, Derek, Ray and John Weathers. 2 weeks in Spain. I love this. It's a very quirky little track, very catchy hook, really good song. I'm turning around. I like the arrangement on this one. The Hammond organ sounds great. Good vocal from Derek as well. Good track. Bet You Thought We Couldn't Do It. Nice little rock track that is. I like that one. Short little ditty. 2 minutes 25. Good track. Who Do You Think You Are? I love the guitar work from Gary on this. It is such delicate stuff. He is I think he's one of the finest guitar players of prog rock. There's so many underrated progressive rock guitarists out there, and Gary's one of them. Mountain Time, sorry. I love this. I love the electric piano and the organ. It all sounds really good together. And for 1977 to get this lovely combination of the two keyboards by Kerry is fantastic. As Old as You're Young. Now this reminds me of a sort of tune that you'd get on a children's TV programme at the time. It's got great Hammond on it and I like it. Memories of Old Days, favourite track on here. This reminds me of a mini sort of Supper's Ready. Great little track. Winning, the drumming on this is totally got nothing to do with what the band's doing, but John just keeps a great beat and it works. For Nobody, bass line on this, ooh, really rocks. Ray Shulman at his best. Again, another solid album. This was very hard to rank because all these now are really belting albums. This is just a good album. It's got some classic songs on here, and I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 7.6. Okay, coming in at number 4, we have their second album from 1971, Acquiring the Taste. It was the final album to feature the original drummer Martin Smith. So we've got Gary Green on here, Kerry Minard, Derek Shulman, Phil Shulman, Ray Shulman and Martin Smith. First track is, I think it's pronounced Pantagruel's Nativity. Quite an intense track this is. Really well crafted music. Excellent track. Edge of Twilight. The organ and all the keyboard work here is a genius from Kerry. Absolutely brilliant. The house, the street, the room. A beautiful bass line here from Ray. Good track. The title track, Acquiring the Taste. This is an instrumental, and it just shows off the wizardry of Mr. Kenny Minard. Brilliant. Wreck. My favourite track on this album. The bass line, the harmonies, great solo, just great prog, awesome stuff. The Moon is Down, not one of my favourite tracks on the album, but it's okay, it's reasonable. Black Cat, another good track. Lots of strings on here, the violins and cellos, again all played by the band. Good track. Good bass line with it as well. Then the last track, Plain Truth. Psychedelia prog rock here. Absolutely brilliant. The band are on fire. Absolutely out the top drawer. This is a great album, but if you're just getting into Gentle Giant, this is not one to start with. You've got to be if you start with this, you've got to be totally obsessed with progressive rock, because it is one of the finest progressive rock albums ever made. And it really gets down to the nuts and bolts of progressive rock. I love it because I am a huge fan of prog. So I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Okay, then coming at number 3, we go to the third album, 1972, Three Friends. It was the first to be released in America, and it's the only album to feature drummer Malcolm Mortimer. So we have got Gary Green, Gary Minard, Malcolm Mortimer and Derek and Phil Shulman and Ray. Opens up with the prologue. Sorry, every time I hear the word prologue, I just think of Frankie Howard. The prologue. One of the most underrated prog tracks ever. It's got little bits of guitar, great little bits of drum, some nice keyboards thrown in all over this track. Excellent track. School Days, again, a great piano piece from Kerry, and it's got some classic. It does sound like a classical track. It's fantastic. Working All the Day, love the bass line from Ray. It reminds me of Van der Graaf Generator in places, this track. It's got some saxophone on there as well. Phil Shulman plays the sax on this, great stuff. Peel the Paint. Again, it's got some great interplay between Kerry and Gary on this. Absolute killer track. Mr. Cars and Quality. Again, just 6 minutes of pure prog. Diverse prog. It's fantastic. Three Friends. Again, this is probably the best track on the album. Kerry is just fantastic on this. The mellotron just oozes out of this. Brilliant. As I said, this is one of the classic progressive rock albums around. Underrated album again. And I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 8.5. Okay, then coming in at number 2, 1975's Freehand, 7th album. This features Gary Green, Kerry Minnar, Derek Shulman, Ray Shulman and John Weathers again. Just the same. Oh, some great drumming here from John. Ooh, the change of tempo in this song is amazing. It goes some fast or slow, but John does not drop a beat. It flows beautifully. On reflection, it's a great track. A nice arrangement of instruments on here. The keyboards are great. The solo's good. It's a very, very fine track. Freehand. Just fantastic. Great piano from Kerry. Guitar work on here is brilliant. Nice textures. It goes from aggressive sound to a delicate touch. It's such intense track. It's very close to the edge as well. So weird and wonderful. Time to Kill. It's a quirky thing. It's one of the Gentle Giant tracks where everyone seems to be doing their own thing. It's alright, but you really have to listen to it. His Last Voyage. Great bass line from Ray. Some nice vibraphone on this. Excellent stuff. Talibont. It's one of them medieval prog tracks. Fantastic. Mobile. The star of the show on this one is John on the drums. Again, that tempo just keeps changing and it doesn't miss a beat. Lovely stuff. Love this album. There isn't a bad track on this band on this album, sorry, from this band. A band that should have had more success. Even that track, Time to Kill, with all the weirdness, it's still good. So I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 8.6. So my number 1, it's a bit obvious, one of the great prog rock albums, Octopus, 4th album, released in 1972. It was the last album with Phil Shulman on, and it was the first with the new drummer John Weathers, who would remain with the band until it disbanded. So we got Gary Green, Kerry Minnar, Derek Shulman, Phil Shulman, Ray Shulman, John Weathers. First track, The Advent of the Panurge. Such a mellow track. Jazzy. Great vocal here. Fantastic track. Then we get Race Contour Trouble. Start this again. Racontre Troubadour. I think that's how you pronounce it. We have got some great musicianship on this. We've got violins, cellos, chamber music. It just goes from prog rock to chamber music in a click of a finger. It's just a brilliant track. My favourite off the album, probably my favourite track by Gentle Giant. A Cry for Everyone, a great little rock number here. The riffs are great keyboards from Kerry. It's a good little rock track. Knots. Again, you just don't know what you're going to get. Here we get some xylophone from John. xylophone on a prog track. Oh, fantastic! It is a great track. Love that one as well. The boys in the band. This is instrumental. The best instrumental Gentle Giant ever did. It just shows off the talent. This band oozed talent, and why they weren't as big as what they should have been, really. Very sad that they didn't hit the big time. I mean, they were a big band with a cult following, but they should have been bigger. Dog's Life. Love the guitar work here from Gary, and so you've got Gary on the guitar, and you've got like a bit of chamber music as well. There's chamber music with the guitar, and it's really nice. Think of Me with Kindness, a very gentle tune, very pastiche. Reminds me of the stuff you get off that very first Genesis album. It's a very good track. River. What makes this is the violin. You've had guitar solos, now we get violin solos, and I love how this track evolves into something special. Fantastic track to end the album. As I said, this is probably one of the most underrated prog albums ever recorded. It's got some belters on it, some fine musicianship on here. It's a shame this band didn't, that Phil left, because this lineup on this album was such a diverse in musicians here, and they come up with a belter here. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9 out of 10. Okay, great band. Just love listening to this music. It's so chilling at times. Okay, so retro ranking today, of course, is going to be a very special one. It's in tribute to the mighty Meatloaf. Been talking to my friends about him and our experiences at the concerts. He will be sadly missed, and it's been nice seeing all the tributes and other stars. So that'll be quite an interesting show. I'm picking my favourite tracks. So I'll be back for that later. So take care for now.